So it's not about the digital channel. It is about, how there is always a trade-off between growth and profitability. If you have to grow 5x, 10x in a year, there's very few businesses which can ever be profitable.
Hello, welcome everyone to the next edition of The Quest. I am Akanksha, your host and content curator. And I have with me today Mr. Vivek Mathur, the founder and advisor at Go Solo Services. And I also have Mr. Pradipto Roy, co-founder at QuickShift's. And we're going to be having this next round of conversation, which is a whole lot of information and insights from Vivek. Over to you, Vivek. Please do tell us about yourself, your entire experience in process management and consulting for retail and e-commerce brands.
Thanks for having me here, Akanksha. I got into consulting fairly early in my career. This was in the mid-90s with a company called Technopack, which is now known as Technopack Advisors. And at that time, I built up pretty much from scratch the retail consulting practice for Technopack and worked with several large groups who were at that time planning an entry into retail in some shape or form. And of course, there were hardly any large retailers. Shoppers Stop was, I think, operating with about 2 or 3 stores at that time, having entered in the early 90s. Pantaloon probably had not yet started up at that time. So at that time, there was the focus was more on new businesses, and that is where I was working with retailers in terms of helping them develop the strategy for market entry. And also had an opportunity to work with the retailers in the UK and in Southeast Asia on building their helping them build processes, so which gave me an exposure into best practices in international retail, and that was very useful to because we could pretty much put those bring those back into the Indian context subsequently. So that was retail. As far as e-commerce is concerned, that came my way a few years later when I was heading strategy for Shopper Stop. And when we decided, this was in 2007, 2008, when we decided to build a multi-channel presence, and I was given the mandate to build shopperstop.com as the head of strategy and new initiatives. And so I along with a very small team, built up shopperstop.com from scratch, including the technology, processes for e-commerce, integration with the main business in terms of merchandising, catalog, fulfillment, all of that, and the operations. And of course, there was a huge element of change management involved. So this stint, and then subsequently building up another e-commerce startup called Gifties, which was in the online gifting space from scratch, and running that for several years, gave me the very, very hands-on experience of e-commerce technology, digital marketing, analytics, logistics and fulfillment, customer service, etc., which is coming in very useful when I am advising clients on so as I can bring together a 30,000 foot strategic perspective and the nuts and bolts of a Shopify or a Magento or a Google Analytics, and so that is certainly very handy.
Right. That's commendable.
So
2007.
Vivek is actually, I would rate Vivek among the top 10 thinkers in India, particularly in the retail and e-commerce space today. I mean, the kind of knowledge that he exudes, he would definitely be in one of those positions.
That's very kind of you.
Most of Vivek, with the kind of experience that you have, what do you see? Where do you see the trends leading to in case of India's e-commerce as well as the retail ecosystem? I mean, are you still very bullish, or you see a lot of burning going to happen? Where do you see that space going into?
See, I think the two major trends which are emerging over the last few years are one, of course, omni-channel. So, which is typically seen as physical retailers going digital, and then of course, converging the two channels, physical and digital. And on the other hand, you have the the physical, the digital first brands, the D2C brands, which are now increasingly going physical, and therefore also so there is a convergence of these two, and that is really how the omni-channel space is building up. So I think these are the the two major trends that are going on. But I mean, honestly, I think D2C is a bit of a misnomer, because most of the so-called D2C brands are hardly direct. Most of their business and their presence is on marketplaces which are not really direct at all. But anyway, the labeling and nomenclature aside, I think no matter what label you stick on them, they have ultimately, these brands also are brands, and therefore they need to build a space in the consumer's mind, like any other brand. I mean, and therefore they need to be wherever their customer shops and provide a consistent experience across all the channels. And so sooner or later they need to be omni-channel. Yeah, I think that's and so I think these are the key things that are happening.
So Vivek, you mentioned change management, that term being used in way back in 2007, with shopperstop.com coming into place, right? So from then till now, what kind of a shift have you seen in traditional brands from then till now, till today?
Well, I think in terms of mindset, there has been a huge shift, huge. I think across. See, at that time, e-commerce was pretty much unknown, and even less multi-channel. Omni-channel had not yet been coined, probably, as a word.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much like the kind of like the elephant and the blind man. So everyone had their own perspective of what e-commerce was and what it would do to them. Some people thought, okay, look, it's just a joke.
A scam.
There's nothing going to happen. Others thought, oh, everybody will start shopping online, and the people in the stores would think that I'll lose my job because nobody will come to my store anymore. So there were all kinds of perspectives, and of course, none of these were anywhere close to the truth. So I think that is really what a large part of the change management entailed, in terms of setting expectations realistic, and most of all not knowing yourself in terms of what to expect, because we were also kind of I mean, it's not that we had a lot of experience at that time as to what how e-commerce would unfold in India, and we were ourselves kind of figuring our way out. So, but yes, there was a lot of evangelizing across the organization, from the CEO down to the security guard at the gate of the stores, right? Because everybody had to know, and I mean, for multi-channel, or well, as omni-channel would be, for that to work, you really need it impacts across the organization. It's not something which you sit and do in one corner of the organization, and so that was and plus evangelizing across, not just within the organization but to vendors as well, right? Bringing them on board in terms of how we needed, asking them for product images, for example, right? Or product descriptions, which itself was, like pulling teeth, because that was something very alien to them. So there was a lot of these were some of the real challenges we had at that time, which of course now, say, almost 15 years down, I think, of course, there is far larger understanding. Pretty much everyone has an online presence in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what a catalog is. The ecosystem has developed so much, right? So in the sense that, you want a catalog image, there are folks who will do images for you, who will do descriptions, they will do 360-degree views. It is, of course, far more evolved in that sense. And I think overall, the as far as mindset is concerned, people have realized that, look, they have to be online, even though they may not be making a great deal of money, or it may not be a significant share of sales even for many of them. But and particularly, I think, reinforced by the pandemic, right? So the pandemic, so whichever the fence sitters were, they have also joined the bandwagon over the last 3 years. So I think that we've crossed that bridge now, and
The
as far.
industry has definitely matured. I mean, that's I think what we are when moving on to. It is from what it was about 5 years back to what it is today. There is definitely a lot more services which have been built around, but around in this ecosystem. The industry is mature. However, the issue which still remains is that we got there's still a lot of bloodbath which happens in this sector. I mean, and that's where my concern comes in, is that should be the ones who will, and then more so when you look at economic, changes or transitions, which typically like times that we have these days, where money is a bit scarce. So funds are a bit scarce. So in that scenario, how would you see this entire thing? Because both retail as well as e-commerce are highly they suck in a lot of capital. So how does one go about sustaining themselves in and more so with omni-channel? How do you sustain yourself? These are questions which I think are there in everybody's mind. So what is your view, Vivek, on this?
See, I think by itself, neither physical retail nor digital retail or e-commerce and converging into omni-channel, I think by themselves, they can be sustainable, right? It is when most businesses, and particularly digital businesses, over the last decade or so, they have grown at or tried to grow at a pace which any business, like we've had retail groups, very large retail groups in India, which grew very, very fast and taking on a lot of debt, and well, ultimately didn't do well and had to divest businesses or risk going under, right? So it's not about the digital channel. It is about how there is always a trade-off between growth and profitability, right? If you grow at a more calibrated rate, I don't think that even digital retail at this point of time, or and particularly at this point of time, because now if you see conversion rates, for example, are substantially higher than what they were 3-4 years ago, right? But if you are looking at growing 5x in every year, then yes, you have a challenge, and that is largely driven from the way these businesses are structured, because being VC funded businesses where there are very large, there's a strong pressure for growth. And I think that is really what drives you have, if you have to grow 5x, 10x in a year, there's very few businesses which can ever be profitable. And unfortunately, I think this growth has kind of become an excuse, or growth is used to gloss over the losses of a business. We are growing, right? Our focus is on growth, so we have, for the next 3 years, we're only going to grow, and of course then that will translate into very ugly bottom lines most of the time. And so I think if one really looks at how growing in a more calibrated manner and having a balanced focus between building a sustainable business and growth, I think it's not impossible to build viable businesses there.
So, being an advisor to multiple brands, Vivek, when do you see a startup owner or a business owner, let's just call a business owner, take note of the fact that strategy is way more important, or it is important or not, I would leave it for you to suggest, than actual action orientation? So everyone's like really ready to get into the game, but then later on, probably mostly they realize that, okay, they need to go back to the drawing board. Does that happen often with your space of work?
Yes, I mean, it does happen often, yes, but not that I've had very first-hand experiences, but yes, I mean, startups are known for their agility and action bias and so on and so forth. and particularly this whole thing of failing fast, right, which has become very popular over the last few years. So I think yes, there is certainly merit in the agility, and particularly when you are looking at doing things which have not been done before, right? So if you're looking at a new category, or if you're looking at disrupting the incumbent in a certain category, there's only so much you can do in terms of research and strategy, right?
Right.
And very often, yes, you do need to do a lot of experimentation, right? So and that is where I think this whole thing of growth hacking, and growth hacking is by no means jugaad. It is not at all jugaad. It is a very scientific
Formula.
process, right? So I think doing a series of small experiments, looking at what we should do, what will impact, have what impact on what metric, and doing that rigorous analysis, planning, and then experimentation, and then rolling that out. I think if that that is really how the agile way of working, or and growth hacking, that's how startups are working these days, which I think is a very good thing to do, because I mean, having worked on extensive strategy development projects for several months, you want building strategy, and then I think there are certain types of organizations and situations where that works, but I think for today's startups, that is not the approach. Having said that, you do need certain strategy in terms of, even though you have a very strong action orientation and this thing, but you still do need to have a strategy. Otherwise, you'll just be doing a series of random experiments, right?
Yeah.
And you'll be blowing up your funding and wasting your time.
Right. Right. So, what would you advise D2C brand? What should they be cautious about, and what should they take their leap of faith in, given the current environment and the current economic circumstances?
So I think one, calibrate growth, in the sense that while you are looking at and when I say calibrate growth, it also means having a bit more focus. So probably in terms of the markets or the products you're starting off, and I'm talking about new brands, right? We're talking of new DTC startups, right? So I think it helps to have focus in the early days, rather than do too many things, because there are so many new shiny things. Somebody will come and tell you, why don't you do conversational commerce? Another will tell you about the other shiniest. I think there is a lot of things. There are a lot of things which one kind of can get drawn into, and for when you are a very new startup, right? You have very limited bandwidth in terms of resources, and both organization, people, money, right? I think it needs to you need to have focus, and second is a very strong orientation to learn. So it does help to learn. If you're on Shopify, learn about Shopify. It's not rocket science most of the time, right? So learn about Shopify. Get hands on with digital marketing. I think these are things which are important in the early days, where you need to really be for an very early stage founder to.
And what about the more established brands, the ones who've been around for a while and are looking at international markets, for example? Pradipta, you would be definitely gaining a lot of insight with the launch of QuickShift Access, which is the international deliveries arm of QuickShift. So with all the insights and the data that you would have seen coming through, what are your views on this? Like, should brands really take the leap, or rather, when should they take the leap and go all out?
So if that's very interesting, Avik. I'll just take this up first. So that's a very interesting area, Kansha. And last few days I've been traveling and meeting with a lot of customers, including also some of them who are doing international cross-border shipments. Okay, these are not merchandise as cargo, but more as courier shipments, right? So they do have international market presence. It does. US happens to be one of the biggest, country wherein these courier packets go. 75% is almost what it accounts for of the total basket. The interesting feature is that while there are modes, I mean, you can do it through Amazon FBA, which provides you an access. You can also do by yourself doing a direct courier. There are still a lot of pain points existing, and a pain point could be the risk that you're carrying in case the product is not sold. What do I do with it? Okay, the costs of keeping out there, just the storage part of it, the inventory part of it is still very phenomenal, right? The cost of delivery is also high if you're using the mainline, let's say, courier companies like DHL or FedEx or Aramax, right? So there's a lot of these pain points. So already few of the companies we in our space have started providing services. We are also in that space, but these are the pain points that we are looking at attacking. And I do feel that that's going to be one promising area. There's a lot of interest in Indian categories, be it organic oils, be it on herbal teas, be it on home decor. These are categories wherein there is a natural interest from these countries. I mean, US, UK, Germany, Australia, there's a natural interest in getting into these categories. From customers, they look at sourcing these from India.
My last question for the quest, what are you most optimistic about, Vivek and Pradipto?
Most optimistic about?
Yes.
Anything. I think the good thing in all of this so far, as what one is reading about and hearing about, is that India will continue to go through, and unlike most other markets, I think at this stage it appears that India will probably not be as affected by the macroeconomic conditions prevailing in other parts of the world. So that I think certainly is cause for optimism. So if we can maintain the kind of growth rates which are being projected, I think that's fantastic. And overall, of course, that will trickle down across to all sectors, consumer, and I think that's definitely a good thing which I'm very optimistic about.
I would add only, of course, the India story is something which is very interesting, and all of us are very positive about. The experimentation that India allows is also something which I feel is something which I'm very optimistic, because it does allow you to experiment if you have an idea. It has a market ready which you can experiment with. It has a tech availability that you can put into to experiment. It allows you to fail without too much of an expense. If you were doing that in an international environment, you would have used up far more dollars than what you would possibly need within India. So those are things which sort of are So if you want to really develop your edge, it's a great place to be in. And then you can expand onto and take it further. So that's something which I'm pretty optimistic and hopeful that we'll be able to do it.
Awesome. Great. It's been wonderful chatting up with both of you. Thank you so very much for your time. And I hope we continue our association for the longest time ever. Thank you so very much.
Sure. Thank you so much, Akanksha. Thanks, Pradipto. Great being here.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for being part of Quest, Vivek.